Hi, my name is Nick. This is my review of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope as it's now known. I just finished watching it, and this movie still makes me feel like a kid again. It's probably the most complete single story, which it should be. It was the first, and, not guaranteed to have sequels. But there's a lot to dig into here. I'm going to say, if you want a comprehensive review and in-depth analysis of this movie, Movie Bob just finished his Really That Good Star Wars, and I can't possibly do better than him. I'll just try to give my perspective on it. First thing to note about this movie is that everything is really dirty and beaten up, and it looks like a lived-in universe. And this was, not often done in sci-fi. It shows what's happened to the galaxy since prequels, what the Empire running things looks like. Everything's kind of run down, and I think that really helps the tone of it, because the prequels are very polished, and, these movies are not. You know much more about all the characters and the setups if you come off the prequels, but watching this just as it was back in the day, we didn't have any of that backstory. So I'll try to give that perspective if I can. Even more coming off from Rogue One. First thing you'll note is seeing Vader for the first time is he's such an intimidating figure. You know nothing about him. He's just this huge man in a black suit who's commanding these brutally efficient stormtroopers. They're gunning down the rebels and capturing the princess, and then you see him later on using the Force to choke his own men in the Empire. He's, just the look of him, immediately you're intimidated by this guy. He screams villain. Then we meet our droids. They're the most lovable and the most human characters in the movie at this point, and they're providing most of the humor. They're very funny. C-3PO is quite a bit bitchier in these movies. He's had 30 years to deal with R2 and his nonsense, and it shows. He backsasses him a lot more. In the prequels, he's kind of more of a milquetoast. They have great effects in these movies, even now, and I'm talking about the original practical effects, not the special edition stuff that was added in. I weep for you children who never saw the original versions and only know the special edition. I think the originals have been restored out there on the internet. It's a shame Lucas won't release them himself. But the Death Star plans serve as our MacGuffin for the movie, and they get put into R2. Yeah. I just want to say a word about the Jawas, is that they may seem villainous. They're scavengers who steal the droids, and but really it's a good thing the droids found them. Otherwise, C-3PO and R2 would still be wandering out there in the desert, and our whole story couldn't happen. So it's a really good thing the Jawas did steal them, so they could sell them to Luke. When we meet Luke, this whole alien world becomes a bit more familiar. He complains about wanting to go buy power converters and hang out with his friends. And here's someone we can relate to, even though this world seems very unrelatable. And that's the whole tone of Star Wars, is alien yet familiar. And I think nothing exemplifies this more than the character of Luke Skywalker. Yeah. Luke is giving the droids their, once over. He's giving C-3PO an oil bath, and C-3PO mentions that he was part of the rebellion, and Luke lights up in the mention of the rebellion. It's our first character note with him, that he really wants to get out of here. He's going to join the academy and learn to be a pilot. He's already a pilot, of course, but he wants to be, he wants to join the rebellion. He wants to be a good guy and fight the Empire. He says later, talking to Ben, that he hates the Empire. And we don't get too deep into the details of why they're evil. It's pretty much obvious why the Empire is evil once we see the Death Star and once we see the way they operate and what they do with it. Oh yeah, I wanted to gush about Obi-Wan. Alec Guinness is the, Shakespearean actor trained on the crew, and he's only in the movie for a pretty brief period relative to the rest of the series. But, this is what gave Ewan McGregor everything that he drew on for the prequels. This is, he's just so good. Every line of his, he classes up all the exposition. He gives us everything we know about the Jedi and the Force, which isn't that much. Just the energy field that surrounds us and penetrates us and binds the galaxy together, that, guides the Jedi's actions but also obeys his commands. The Force is never really that defined until we meet Yoda in the next movie and we get a little more information. And then Obi-Wan gives Luke the lightsaber that if you watch the prequels, you know the whole backstory of it. In the film, all you know is that it belonged to his father and it's a weapon of a Jedi. And Luke just kind of waves it around a little bit, then puts it away and goes back to talking about, he's really more interested in finding about what happened to his father because his uncle has never told him anything but lies. He said he was a spice pilot or something. I forget what he said, but he was some sort of pilot not having to do with the war or the Empire. And so Obi-Wan gives him a little more of the truth, but not the whole truth. Still, he hasn't told him that he's Vader, which may not have even been written into the script yet, depending on who you talk to. But we get the message from R2 at this point, the full message. We have Princess Leia telling us, "Help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope." The plans have to get to the rebellion. They're essential to the rebellion's survival. And so we have our mission for the movie, and Luke gets his official call to adventure. And he doesn't want to go at first. He has to go home and see that his aunt and uncle Owen and Beru have been killed. And let me just say, when I used to watch this as a kid, I had a VHS copy that was taped off TV, so it didn't have all the shots. It was edited, so I never noticed that really gruesome shot, probably the most gruesome shot in all the movies, of their burned and charred corpses laying outside of the farmstead. I just knew from inference from all the smoke that, oh, they're probably dead. But no, it's watching on Blu-ray, it's really gory. Like, you can see their skeletons, and it's just, I didn't see that as a kid. It wasn't until later as an adult when they came out on DVD that I watched the full unedited versions. So then we cut to the Empire. This is our first time seeing the Empire since Vader on the ship in the beginning. And Vader is so classic. All of his lines are quotable and memorable. This is when he does the Force choking. And you see that Vader is not really respected by the Empire rank and file, whereas probably he should be. I guess they're not aware of what he did 30 years ago to create the Empire. It's kind of worn off since then. He has a really odd rank within the Empire. He's the Emperor's second in command. You'd think he would have a little more respect from the guys at the bottom. But everyone in the Empire is greedy and power hungry and trying to undercut each other. You can see after the Empire falls, they fall to factionalism, the Imperial remnants fighting each other for power and control. It attracts a certain type of person. And the Empire, I think, is meant to symbolize that blind hunger for power in itself. Then we meet, I don't know, yeah, this is a good time. The heroes, Luke and Obi-Wan get to Mos Eisley, and this is a good time to bring up the special edition nonsense. A lot of the special edition changes were fine, they were good. He cleaned up a lot of the effects, the ships in space look a lot better. So I remember that, seeing them on the big screen when they were re-released, that they do look a lot better, a lot of the shots. They use the original shots when possible, but the shots of the ships in space, like during the Death Star sequence, look better. But there's so much crap that doesn't need to be there. Like the stormtroopers on dewbacks. It's really obvious CGI. And the, yeah. All these creatures in Mos Eisley, including one thing that like lumbers right through the frame. And any time that happens, you're covering up the original work that ILM did, and it's sad for that reason, because we should see what was originally there. It was great. So release the original editions, Lucas. Don't make the fans do it for you. We see Obi-Wan use the Jedi mind trick for the first time on the stormtroopers, and this is the first time we know the Force isn't just a physical thing, that it's also a mental thing. That the Force can kind of do anything the writers want, and this will play into my later reviews. When people say that the newer Disney films are violating canon, no, they're not. The Force can do anything the writers say it can. It's kind of like Superman in that respect. There was a time when Superman couldn't fly, but that's not this video, that's a different one. Then we get the droid racism for some reason. Why do they not want droids in the cantina? Are they going to steal things? Is it because they don't buy drinks and they would just be cluttering the place up? Is it because they have recording devices and nobody wants their conversations recorded? There's all kinds of explanations why they wouldn't want droids in there. I wish it was expanded on a little bit. But we get to meet Han Solo. We get to see Obi-Wan cut off the guy's arm with a lightsaber. And it's interesting because the wound is not cauterized as it is on every other instance. The lightsaber wounds are instantly cauterized. Here his arm is still bleeding. And we get chalked this up to this alien having a special kind of blood. But now I'm going into headcanon territory that you don't really need to. The point is that Han Solo is awesome, and it's Harrison Ford's natural charisma and charm that makes the character shine like this. Han shot first, if you aren't aware of what, he used to be the only one who shot, and Greedo didn't even get a shot off, and then it was changed and edited back so that Greedo shot first and Han shot him under the table. And this is to do with Han's morality. Lucas is trying to soften Han's morality so he's not so much of a gray area. I know my daughter didn't like Han Solo as a kid because he was morally a gray area, and she found that a little hard to understand. She preferred Luke because he's a straight-up good guy. But I think that opinion changed as she got older. And we have the awful special edition added Jabba scene, which Lucas originally shot with a large heavy-set man and then pasted a cartoon Jabba the Hutt over it. And it fits fine, if you didn't know it's not supposed to be there. It's unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. Kind of slows down the pacing of the movie. But we do see Boba Fett in this movie because of it, because he's there in that scene. Just as a bounty hunter. Then we see Princess Leia is now resisting the interrogation droid, so they decide to blow up Alderaan, or at least threaten to blow up Alderaan to get her to reveal the location of the rebels. Which she does. She tells him the location of the rebel base is Dantooine, and Grand Moff Tarkin blows up Alderaan anyway, just showing you how evil the Empire is. That even if you cooperate, they're still going to exercise this brutality. Leia says it's not a military target, they have no weapons, they're peaceful people. And they are. And they don't care, they kill them all. Then we cut to the Millennium Falcon. We see Luke getting the only Jedi training that he will receive until he meets Yoda, which, is another reason why people shouldn't complain about Rey getting no training, because Luke didn't really get much either. But he's blocking shots with his lightsaber from a little remote droid. Han shows up and he's unimpressed by this. He thinks it's luck. And so Ben puts the blast shield down and tells him, reach out with your feelings. And this 5 minutes, and whatever time else they had off camera is all the training he gets from Ben. He really has a very short time with him. Then we get to the Death Star. That's no moon. There's so many quotable lines and memorable scenes. I'm trying not to delve into, every single one of this review would be an hour and a half long. But it's such a daring rescue. These, 4 people on the Death Star trying to rescue the princess from the detention block, and Ben has to shut down the tractor beam with literally hundreds of, if not thousands of stormtroopers and Imperials surrounding them. The odds of success on this are just astronomically low, and yet they're able to do it. Danger is always just one blaster bolt behind them. And Han doesn't even want to rescue the princess. His morality, again, is a gray area until Luke promises him, she's rich, there'll be a reward. We get a lot of humor from Han's character, too. Princess, when we do rescue her, she gets her badass moment where, the boys are just kind of shooting lasers back at the bad guys and nobody has an idea what to do. She's the one who blasts out the garbage chute and ducks into it. And up till now, the princess has been, a diplomat, a senator, and now we get to see that she is more of a badass, regular person character. She's giving Han back quips and barbs as good as she gets. And they start their sort of back-and-forth relationship that'll expand in the next movie. And when I was a kid, the trash compactor scene, after the Death Star scene, after the, the Death Star assault, after the lightsaber fight, this was my favorite scene that I would reenact for my parents, was the trash compactor scene. I think it's because it's so dangerous. You're so, convinced they're gonna die, and they so closely almost do. And it's really funny when, C-3PO thinks their screams of triumph are their screams of death. So, after that, after that we have the swinging across the gap sequence that Luke does while, that is calling back to the Republic serials and the old Errol Flynn, Robin Hood type adventure movies. And that's a really exciting scene that I loved as a kid. We have Obi-Wan meeting Vader again, and if you've seen the prequels, of course, this plays out completely differently informed by the past. If not, you just sense that there's a lot more to this, that they used to be master and student, and it gives you all the information you need to know about how Jedi are and that they can fall to the dark side. And this will all play out more in later movies. For now, it's just, the reason why this fight is so limited is because these blades, the lightsabers, kept breaking. They were very not stable. and not tough. So, I think if anything, they could have somehow reshot this, put Alec Guinness's face on a different actor. You could do something to make this more in line. Because if you watch Rogue One, you see Vader using his lightsaber, then you see this scene in the very next movie, you wonder what happened. If you want to headcanon that, he had glitches in his suit. I don't know. But Ben has his most iconic line, "If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." I think this is because he becomes a Force ghost and he can talk to Luke and he can guide him this way, and this will lead to Vader's eventual downfall. Then we get after they escape the Death Star, we get the World War II dogfighting scene with Han and Luke in the gunner's seats taking out TIE fighters. And it's the first time we see space combat in the movie. And it's done really well, for the time, 1977, you didn't see this kind of exciting space combat, compare it to what you would see on Star Trek, and it's kind of stayed and solid. Then we have the Death Star Assault, which is probably the best sequence in the whole movie, and here, a fun game to play is picking out the original shots from the special edition reinsert shots. It's very easy to tell, but if you're not looking for it, you can be fooled into thinking it's all the same thing. It starts with the X-Wings having a dogfights with the TIE fighters and trying to blow up the surface guns, and then they go into their trench runs, and everybody fails at the trench runs until it's Luke's turn, and he goes into his trench run, and Vader is flying behind and destroying all the X-Wings, and the entire time the Death Star is coming closer and closer to blowing up the Rebel base, and it's such a well-constructed climax. It really reminds me of, I guess it inspired the climax of Episode 1. Which is most similar in, structure after Episode 7. But Luke's trench run only works because two factors. Han comes in and shoots Vader off of his back, and Luke uses the Force. Because another guy did get the torpedoes to shoot at the Death Star exhaust port, but they only impacted on the surface. That reinsert shot is from the special edition where you see the torpedoes actually go into the hole. I can't remember what was there. It's been so long since I saw the unspecial edition version. But use the Force, Luke. He blows up the Death Star, and everyone cheers. And then we end with the final scene where everyone gets their medals and this fantastic piece of music from John Williams. And my mom was always upset that Chewie doesn't get a medal. I mean, he helped out too. He was the co-pilot of Millennium Falcon. But he's standing there. Luke and Han get medals. Chewie gets no medal. And I told her, well, he'd just chew on it, And she said, well, he should be able to. He deserves a medal. So, #medal for Chewie. And that about wraps it up for A New Hope. I hope you enjoy this series. I'll barely make it for the rest of them, leading up to Rise of Skywalker. And I thank you for your time.